Bills Mafia. Are you ready? From North Carolina to Buffalo, the Mafia is united. This is your home for the passion, the power, and the pride of the Buffalo Bills. Welcome to Bills Mafia Carolina Takeover. Let's go, Bills.
Welcome to the very first episode of Bills Mafia Carolina Takeover. I'm Owen, coming to you from right here in North Carolina, but always repping the Bills. Now, I know there are a ton of Bills podcasts out there, and this is just one of a billion, but why not, right? Why not do it? Technology's there. I've been wanting to do this, so here we are. Now, this show is all about passion, pride, energy of Bills Mafia, no matter where you are. So each week, I will be breaking down the Bills games, talking about the big plays and the tough losses, which hopefully there aren't a lot, but we'll do that as well, and everything in between. We will hit on roster battles, hot takes, and of course, my favorite, Mafia Mail, where your questions and comments get on the show from Orchard Park to North Carolina. This podcast is all about Buffalo Bills. All right, so let's jump into this preseason week 2. It was Bills versus Bears. Look, not a lot to talk about here from the Bills standpoint. I'm sure if you're a Chicago Bears fan, you're loving it out there in Chicagoland. But, the reality of the situation is that Josh Allen did not play, which is obviously no surprise to anyone. But it was really an opportunity for all of us to really kind of hone in on who is going to be Josh's backup here, Mike White or Mitch Trubisky. Right off the bat, Mike White didn't play well, didn't look like he was comfortable in there. And I know that the offensive line was, third string, fourth string offensive line, but it really wasn't a good game for Mike White. And really to this point, it's Mitch's job really to lose. Again, with a backup quarterback, which, we have talked about this, since before Josh was a quarterback of ours, but backup quarterback is really an important position for the Bills right now. And you need somebody that's going to be able to go into the games if Josh goes down for a game or two and be able to, go 2-2, 1-2, or steal a game or whatever the case may be. That's what you're going to need. Obviously, if Josh is out for an extended period of time, that's going to be a really difficult hurdle for us to overcome. So one of the insights that I was looking at and will continue to look on is the backup quarterback. Where's that position look like? And right now, I got to put my money on Mitch Trubisky. That doesn't mean that White isn't going to be a part of the organization. I think everybody knows Josh loves White. And so that would be, an extra addition if we can get him on the practice squad. Another thing that I noticed too here, and it's been talked about a lot in a lot of different shows and podcasts, is that back end. Without Poyer and Hyde back there, it's one of those situations where who is going to play there, how effective they're going to be, and what does that look like? I loved Cole Bishop coming out of college last year. I thought he stepped up in roles where he had to last year, played pretty well, but boy, is there a huge decline by Cole Bishop there. I mean, he looked lost at times. Obviously he hasn't played and has been out the summer and been out of training camp and those type of things, but man, the safety position is going to be a huge concern for us going into this. And I wouldn't be surprised, and I would be open to, and I've heard a lot about this, but I wouldn't be surprised, and I would be open to trading someone on the defense for that safety spot, to secure that safety spot. Because right now, if we had to go into week 1, you got Damar Hamlin. I don't know where Tyler Rapp is, but, in his injury and that type of thing. But you got Damar Hamlin and Cole Bishop right now battling it out there. I love Damar, But I feel like going into this season, the back end of the defense was something that we need to address. I thought we did that with Cole Bishop last year. And with him not being in the lineup and him being hurt, it's going to be a huge transition for Cole Bishop, I think. So it's going to be interesting to see what Bean and McDermott do, going into Tampa and then getting ready for the season there. O-line, I think the backup O-line, is solid to a point. I mean, obviously with the 5 guys we have up front, the starters there, you're hoping that the O-line, the backup O-line aren't going to get involved in that situation. But if they are, you got 1 or 2 pieces that you probably had there. Ryan Van Mark really didn't have a good game. I think there was one time he had 2 false starts back to back. That's just simply, discipline and getting in there. But the offensive line for me looked, from the depth chart point of view, going past the starters, definitely looked like there was some struggle there. Bean's not really known to keep a whole lot of offensive linemen there, practice squad guys. So it would be interesting to see who they keep from that depth section, from second, third, fourth string, to keep around. So keep an eye out on that, because that will play a part into this for sure, especially when it comes to, if someone gets hurt on the offensive line. Defensive line, to me, played really well. And I know that there was second, third, and fourth stringers in there, but I do love, even last week's game, I do love the defensive line. I think that was a concern by Bean and McDermott going into this season. They addressed it with Bosa, and obviously picking up on the defensive line in the draft. I did feel like they brought a lot of pressure, and that was the Chicago Bears, I believe, first quarter. The starters were in the game there, and I felt like that there was a few times within there that the defensive line played really well on that front. So I'm really interested to see going forward how that all plays out. We obviously know McDermott does rotation things, which I think is going to really help Joey Bosa. I know a lot of people say it was the same thing with Vaughn. I think you're getting a different player, a little bit younger. So I think that defensive line that the Bills have right now is going to be something that's going to be very interesting to look at, and maybe the key to the pressure that we've been lacking there. So I thought they did really well. And then obviously the darling of preseason, and one that's been talked about all preseason, all offseason, Tyrell Shavers, continually brings it. I feel like every week he's always there. His number's always called. So that is going to be an interesting piece. One we'll probably talk about, going down the line next week, because I do believe the Bills really want him on there, but trying to find an avenue to put him on there is going to be difficult. So I would like to see what happens on this front with Shavers, because I do believe that he has, in my opinion, done enough to earn a spot on the team. And I know the practice squad is an option for him as well. So we'll have to see how that plays out. I'm not sure we're going to see a whole heck of a lot with Josh Allen as the quarterback in the next game against Tampa. So really, a lot of it's going to really have to come through, my guess, practice and what we get from those guys reporting at practice. And then the last kind of highlight I took out of there, and this was a combined highlight from last week as well. Look, the tight end position is an interesting position for the Bills, because you got a guy like Dawson Knox, who I would say is a true tight end. But when you also got Kincaid, which I think all of us thought Kincaid coming in was going to be more of a wide receiver threat. And he showed a little bit of that last year. But the tight end depth chart, to me, is very interesting, because are the Bills going to carry 3 tight ends? What does that look like? Because from what I've seen on some of the preseason games, these past 2 here, there is no one that is separating themselves in that small group of third string, second string, and fourth string. So I'd be interested to see what the Bills do there. Again, I have always placed Kincaid as more of a wide receiver, not a true tight end. I do look at Dawson Knox as kind of a true tight end there. So it'd be interesting to see how the Bills play the 53-man roster with the depth chart on the tight end. Do they go fullback of some sort and just keep Knox and Dawson? I'm sorry, Knox and Kincaid there and not carry a third tight end? Or do they get a third tight end and roll with that? So that's going to be an interesting position battle that I'd like to see. And obviously next week with Tampa, the final preseason game, I'm sure it's going to be a lot of rookies, a lot of third, fourth stringers in there. So that game may actually solidify what we're looking at as far as a tight end. Is anybody coming out of that tight end room in the depth chart good enough to play into that 53-man roster to be able to, have that 3 tight end set when needed? All right, now the game recap highlights. Look, it's preseason. I'm not going to dive too much into this here. I do want to recognize Caleb Williams there. Went 6 for 10, 107 yards. Great preseason. Like, I'm not sure how much you're going to, hang on to that. I'm sure if you're in Chicago or a Bears fan, you're ecstatic waking up today. The Bills had their third and fourth string team out there, including the beginning of the game. So, have at it, whatever you want to do there. I thought the announcers certainly were like watching the first quarter. I thought the Chicago Bears were going to be undefeated. The praise that they were giving them, rightfully so in some cases, but they were playing against third and fourth string. If you're in the Bears division, based on what those announcers were talking about, you better watch out because this team's going to go undefeated. So very interesting. I don't know if that was because they're in Chicago or what have you, but anyway, Caleb Williams, 107 yards, had a good game. Preseason, not sure how much you're going to chalk that up on there. Injuries from the Bills standpoint, we all know about Jordan Hancock. He had a little bit of a shoulder scare. That's in the DB position there, the cornerback. So that's an interesting position as well with backups. Obviously, Trey White there. Hairston, the rookie for the Bills not being available does kind of bump Trey up a little bit, but kind of that backup position there on the cornerback is going to be interesting to see. I don't think Hancock's going to really be a huge deal there, but we'll know more as the week goes on. That's our game recap right here on Bills Mafia Carolina Takeover.
Bills Mafia, make some noise. It's time for Mafia Mail.
All right, Mafia, it's time for one of my favorite parts of this podcast, and that's called Mafia Mail. This is where you, the fans, get to write in with your questions, your hot takes, who you think should be fired, or whatever's on your minds, and I bring it right to this platform. And here is our first submission. It actually comes from Frank in Virginia, so thank you, Frank. He actually saw our social media posts about us launching a new podcast, and he got in a question for us. So that's fantastic. It's a good way to start the first episode. So thank you, Frank. And so let me pull this up here and let's kick this off. So Frank says, if I could invite one Bills player, past or present, to a Bills Mafia tailgate, who would it be and why? And would they be the first one through a table? This is a perfect question, Frank, to start off the Bills Mafia Carolina Takeover. Man, really tough. A lot of good choices. I'm thinking early 90s. Like, I would love to see Bruce go through a table. Kelly, certainly. I think Steve Tasker would probably be pretty crazy. But I got to go with my boy Josh Allen. 100%. Because he is the life of the party. He's going to bring the beers. And I'm calling it right now. Josh Allen would absolutely smash through a table with us. No doubt about it. That's the kind of QB that he is. That's the energy he brings to the field. And that's the QB that you want tailgating. Thanks for your comment, Frank.
And that closes out this week's Mafia Mail. Always love hearing from the family. Now, back to the action.
All right. Thanks again, Frank, for that question. Keep them coming. Here's some closing thoughts on preseason game number 2. No surprise, score doesn't matter. What matters is finding the answers before we get to Baltimore week 1. Now, certainly we have some questions on the QB side for backup, although Mitch Trubisky right now is probably your best play, and I would be shocked if he's not the second quarterback behind Josh there. So I feel like that's kind of locked up, and you probably won't see Mitch a whole lot next week, and more probably White would be my guess. Concerns certainly after preseason game number 2, safety. So it's going to be really interesting to see what we do there. Tight end position, as I talked about, the tight end and the depth chart. Be interested to see what they do there. I felt like the defensive line looks hungry. A couple young guys are definitely making some noise. All right, week 3 is next week. And it's the final dress rehearsal, final preseason game, finally. And we'll see who locks down the roster spots before this thing gets kicked off against Baltimore for the finale of Orchard Park, which is super exciting. And that's it, Bills Mafia. That's going to wrap up episode 1 of Bills Mafia Carolina Takeover. Thanks for riding with me. I really do, because I know there's a billion of these podcasts out there, so I appreciate you riding with me. And remember, this isn't just my show, it's our show. So if you got questions, takes, or you just want to sound off, you want to fire somebody, hit me up on the Mafia Mail. It's Bills Mafia CTO@gmail.com. That's Bills Mafia CTO@gmail.com, all one word. And I'll feature you right here on the podcast. Make sure you subscribe to Spotify. And if you enjoyed today's show, leave a comment in Spotify, share it with your fellow Mafia members, and let's grow this Carolina Bills Mafia family together. Until next time, I'm Owen, repping the red, white, and blue from North Carolina to Orchard Park. And as always, be good, do good, God bless, and go Bills.
That's a wrap on today's episode of Bills Mafia Carolina Takeover. Thanks for tuning in and repping the Mafia with us. Don't forget to subscribe, drop your Mafia mail, and join us next time as we bring the passion, the pride, and the power of the Buffalo Bills straight from the Carolinas. Let's go Buffalo.